Welcome back to Sikistan. Welcome back to yet another Strength Coaches React, S&C Coaches React, whatever we're going to be called today. Today we're reacting to a powerlifter. He's quite young powerlifter. The reason I wanted to do this reaction, we obviously coach a lot of lifters, a lot of athletes, a lot of people who do the lifts and powerlifters as well. But when we're looking for technical models, most of the time we're not able to recommend looking at a specific lifter, particularly if they're kind of at the top of their game, due to the fact that they make a lot of accommodations for tightness or difference in body morphology because they might be very, very big or very, very strong, and they're afforded certain graces because of that size or strength they might have. An athlete who has incredibly good technique and is incredibly good to watch if you're an up-and-coming lifter, a development lifter, is Shane Hunt. He's based in the US. I know one of my athletes trains in the same gym as him, but he's a really good example of what kind of genetic freak plus very hard training plus very good form and technique, as well as a host of other factors, can do. And it will probably give you an example of how you might want your lifts to look.
I've just before we get going, the only time I've ever seen Dara gush over a strength athlete has been Clock Off, and that was 10 years ago. So Shane Hunt must be quite something. I haven't seen a lot of his lifts. I know who he is, but I haven't seen a lot of his lifting and stuff. If it's put together this, so I'm very interested to see what. I know he's quite athletic. I see him doing some full box splits or very close to full box splits, which it's pretty hot. That's hot.
No, it's impressive too.
Yeah.
So I think Shane sits around 275. We're going to start the video just with a video of some benching, some squatting. You'll see here he's high bar back squatting. So a lot of his training is done as high bar, and then you'll see as he gets closer to competition, he goes to low bar. This is a bench press.
I love the straight wrist position on the bench. That is so fucking good. Is this position here where on the bench there's no kicked back to the wrists. It's like ridiculously straight. We talk about this a lot in weightlifting, that you want to be as straight as possible in the wrists. Sometimes people talk about doing it in weightlifting to increase the range of motion in your shoulder because it sends it further back behind your shoulders, so you compensate for poor mobility. We don't see that when people are benching. We don't see people kicking back the wrists to compensate for poor mobility, but we do see people doing it for, it just feels like it's a kind of a limp position, that default position where you just end up in a position that feels better but is actually much weaker and much worse in the long run. If you keep this nice and straight, you're obviously sporting it with joints and muscles underneath the barbell as much as possible, and you are able to control it a lot better and hence drive forward into the bar as much as possible. So you don't want any power leaks.
The other thing you'll notice in Shane's bench press here is, so he's barefooted. To be honest, most of his lift is done barefooted, or else he'll do them in barefoot shoes. He has a very, very good setup with his feet and his hips. So a lot of powerlifters, when they're big, like Shane's around 275 pounds, I think.
125 kilos with abs.
Yeah, in crazy shape. But a lot of those will become very restricted in the hips. And then they'll do things like wearing Olympic weightlifting shoes to try and keep their heels on the ground or keep some grip on the ground during the bench press as they're driving into it. You'll see there's none of that here. He's very, very strong in his foot position, even on the bench.
So the next thing you'll see here is Shane's physique. Now, Shane is pretty open, as far as I'm aware, about his performance-enhancing drug use, so we can talk about that. But you might remember from the video where we talked about physiques for weightlifting, where we talked about fat doesn't contract. It's not useful. So all the way up until you're just going to be an absolute super heavy, until you're going to be 200 kilos, you want to be as lean as possible all the way up. There's never any reason when you're a strength athlete to have any extra adipose tissue that you can possibly afford to not have. So you want to have as little as possible within reason. So you don't want to be like 5%, but there is very, very little benefit to having large amounts of adipose tissue until you're getting into that extreme ends of super heavyweight lifting. So as much contractile tissue, as little as possible to remain healthy adipose tissue gives you the most bang for your buck, gives you the most performance enhanced package, I suppose. Is he going to strict press this?
No.
So this is that's the problem with powerlifting reds. The calibrated plates is so tiny.
Yeah, I know, his current number's around 750 or 755 pounds.
What's that?
340 kilos.
Fucking hell,
very, very heavy squats. These are obviously pretty recent videos, and you'll see wearing sleeves. He's wearing elbow sleeves in these. Most of the time he's competing in like a raw division or raw with sleeves. One thing you'll notice about Shane, and this is why I'm particularly fond of doing this style of video, is he has a lot of training footage up for when he's very, very young. So I think these are around 2012. He's around 15 or 16 in these videos. You'll see he's like 90 kilos, I think, in this bench video, or 200 pounds. Yeah, around 90 kilos. And he's benching what looks to be 120 kilos. Might be 110 kilos, but something around that. He's benching it. He looks incredibly strong. And this is kind of giving you an idea. When a lot of people see the elite level powerlifters online, most of the time they're thinking, oh, they get there because of drugs, and that I'm training in a gym and I train really hard and I train 5 times a week and I use whatever program. The only reason I'm not getting to these numbers is because I'm not doing X, Y, and Z in terms of pharmacology. Realistically, most people are never going to get to these kind of numbers, even if they take whatever they want to take. You can open the floodgates and it's just not going to happen for you. This is an example of kind of where you need to be as a younger athlete, or for, if I was to say, talk in general terms, most people who are going to be incredibly strong realize they're going to be incredibly strong at quite a young age. If you're a weightlifter, like if you're Gurf, you're going to snatch 130 or 140 kilos within the first couple of years of training. You'll know if you're going to be this strong. And so when you're watching these kind of people online, these really high level lifters, don't think that the reason you're not getting there is because of some sort of moral decision they've made or you haven't made. Most of the time it's irrespective of that. Those things will help you to get there. They're combined with a suite of other variables that will allow this to happen. But these videos of 15-year-old monsters bench pressing large enough weights to be very, very impressive. I know there's some squatting.
What is he here?
15 years old.
Is there more of his later squatting in the video?
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, so you'll see, I think this is around 110, 120 kilos for reps.
Yeah.
He's around 90 kilos body weight as a 15-year-old. This is 230 kilos for reps, and he's 15 or 16 here.
He's still has the same amount of kind of looseness in his joints in some ways, which is definitely contributes to his athleticism, so usually when we see very heavy powerlifters, it's a very rigid and high force, and that's how it should be, a lot of tensile strength, but you can see like his hips and his joints are quite loose, like he's very, very flexible. You see a lot of knee movement. I won't say excessive knee valgus, but there's definitely movement there. And I know he's what age you say he was here?
I think he's 16, 15 or 16.
This is like 230 kilos for a double.
Yeah.
So obviously just a freak.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say he's a freak.
I think he's a freak.
I think this is a build up to, I'm not sure if it's 600 pound deadlift. At the same age, obviously, this is back around 2012, I think, if I remember correctly, from when I downloaded the video. But yeah, very, very strong, good technique. You're talking about also a very large teenager here. If you look at most 15 or 16 year olds, like obviously there's some freaks around, but even if you look at joint structure, like wide elbows, wide across the back and the shoulders, big thick knees and ankles.
Yes.
And this is coming up again, but this is one of the ways you know if you're going to be a freak. If you're in this kind of shape, most of the time if you see a 90 kilo or 100 kilo teenager and they're in very, very good shape, they're going to be one of the stronger people. This is a competition, I think this is WPA.
So one of the things interesting from birth is your birth weight is an indicator of how much lean mass you'll have later in life. So obviously it's not a guarantor, of what you will be, but it's a good indicator or a predictor of what you could be essentially later in life. So same things with, joint circumferences in relation to your bicep or whatever. So if you have a bicep or if you have a wrist circumference that's one standard deviation below the mean, the likelihood is that you're not going to have a bicep that's going to be one standard deviation above the mean, and stuff like that. And you can see his knee joints are just quite thick. There's maybe, I don't know if there's any correlation between having thicker joints and injury risks. The ligaments and bones around them are still susceptible to the same injuries. you know, if you are bigger, you'll be lifting more weights. So is the risk proportional? I would imagine so. There doesn't seem to be any people still get injured as much as possible, but that'd be an interesting one to see if there's any kind of correlation with joint size and circumference in relation to injury risk. I know we talked about in the ACTN3 gene, certain types of training with people in possession of that gene had lower injury risks, but then when they did other types of exercise, they ended up with higher injury risks in terms of like high endurance stuff as opposed to the power stuff. So he's squatting 474, so that's like 215 or something, and he's still a baby.
Yeah, this isn't 2012. I think this is a bit later, but still, this is the first competition I think I could see on his channel. He goes over 500 pounds with the squats here. These are very good competition level squats. I'm not sure what WPA is in terms of like tested or non-tested, or what their story is with different categories, but incredibly good. Like, and you'll see these kind of competition performances popping up again and again. We have a video of his most recent competition at the end of this video, where you'll get to see a 340 kilo plus squat.
Loser, you missed it.
You'll see a bench press that's over 500 pounds and a over 900 pound deadlift. But this is kind of queuing it up again. This is, what's this, 130 kilos?
So, 308, so it's like a 140.
Okay.
So all very doable numbers for freaks without gear. Now, of course, he could be on gear at this age. You know, many, more than ever, there's teenagers on gear, which is a subject for another time. But all of these numbers are certainly doable for freaks who've been training for a while. You know, and you do see freaks progress faster. So 551, that's like 250, I think.
So good.
Very nice conventional deadlift.
Yeah.
Just big everything there. Big hands, big joints, big legs, big hems.
Yeah, it's good to see like younger athletes as well pulling conventional in terms of like your overall development. Definitely being conventional and being a slightly more skewed towards high bar squat is going to be better for your development at a younger age. Like as a teenager, what's this, 590 pounds?
That's like 260 something, I'd say. 265 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the most recent competition then. So this is only a couple of weeks ago. This is kind of what spurred on this reaction video. All of the lifts in this competition are incredibly fast. So you don't see any grindy reps. You certainly don't see anything where he might possibly fail a rep on any of these. These are, so we'll wait till it goes around again, a 755 pound. So the squat's a 755 pound squat. The bench press is 501 pounds, which is 227 kilos, and then a 903 pound deadlift.
So the biggest thing I think you can take away from this, in what you could definitely translate to your own training, and we see it a load with our powerlifters, is his levels of joint elasticity and muscle elasticity is incredibly high. So there is a video of him doing a full split, so very, very close to it. He does all his squats very, very low, barefooted, doesn't seem to have any restrictions, and you'll see how well that translates over. Obviously the squat, the more mobile you are, the better positions you have, which is very, very useful. But if you go to that bench, you'll see how wide he's able to sit with his hips, but still in and close to his line with the hips. So this level of like hip abduction is very, very wide, and he's in an incredibly strong position there. Super wide base. He's almost like the four wheels of if you imagine kind of like of a car or a truck or something. You know, he's really well pinned down. He's in a great position. And then if you go to his sumo deadlift, the biggest thing we see with sumo deadlifters having an issue with is they lack any of the ability to open up their hips or abduct their hips out wider. So they lack that kind of really upright position, and every bit you get away from that barbell and that more upper back kyphosis and round away from the barbell in the sumo deadlift, you end up with less ideal positions and you go stray further away from the benefits of the sumo deadlift. So if you watch people, for example, if you look at their ankle, their knee and their hip, oftentimes we'll see this knee angle is closing in inside the ankle, and we'll see this kind of hip close in and they're not able to open up fully and sit upright. It's a very, very hard position to do. A lot of people will know if you've done sumo deadlift, if you really want to sit upright like that, the level of hip joint mobility that you need is very, very difficult to get to and impressive, even for people who are weightlifters and stuff, because it is quite an extreme position. But when you do that, you can sit up with a nice biomechanically favourable line with your lower limbs, so you can sit very, very upright and then maximise all the benefits of the sumo deadlift. And you can see in these benches very well, you know, all of that is something you can you can definitely implement in your own training. And something we see a lot in powerlifters is they always have some glaring issues in terms of tightness, and the muscle elasticity just isn't there. So in our weightlifters, we have similar issues, but if you're powerlifting, if you could just dedicate that amount of positional strength, I would bet you'd be injury free more often, but you'd almost certainly have higher performance and be more consistent with it, and we would just feel a whole lot better if you're not incredibly wound up and tight.
So speaking of being wound up and tight, I know a lot of you are excited about the merchandise that's coming out soon. We're probably going to see the merchandise coming out next week, so just keep an eye on this space. As you know, we put a video out every day, so you'll be able to see it come out once it does come out. And talk to you all again soon.